Welcome to the Crazy Canuck Truckin' Podcast. This is episode 16. We are so glad that you could join us. Please make sure to follow our podcast by subscribing on your very favorite podcast platform, whether it would be Podbean, whether it would be Apple Podcasts or wherever. And you can follow Crazy Canuck Truckin' on Twitter, on Instagram. You can follow us on YouTube and subscribe, as well as you can email us at crazycanucktruckin@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star rating, share us, because so far I just make my kids do it, so someone else should do it too. I want to say thank you to Jesse James Dupree and Dixie Inc. because they do our theme song, and it's fabulous. I find myself singing along with it every single time. I am one of your hosts. I am Size Manners Dakota Bridget, and my co-host is
Crazy Canuck Dave. How are you doing today, Bridget?
Fabulous. I even remembered that we should pick a 10 code for today, and our 10 code is 1021, which means call by phone, because that's what we're all doing. Everybody needed to use their phone today in order to call in, us as well as our guest, who we'll get to shortly, and his name is Henry Roberts. But before we do that, we have some comments to share from listeners, which is so exciting. We love the fact that people wanted to reach out and talk to us. So, Dave, do you want me to read a couple of them?
Sure. Yeah, I know the first one you're going to read is going to be from the episode 14 with Sonia Keys. So why don't you read that to us?
So Sonia was great fun, and we recorded that, and I'm not really sure what happened, but we all basically lost control, and there was a lot of giggling. So for those of you who have not listened, somewhere around the 25-minute mark, we just laughed a lot, and I'm so glad I was on mute, because then people couldn't see me actually laid back in my desk chair, unable to take it anymore. But her story about her keys was awesome. I don't want to take it away from y'all, but she accidentally lost her keys in a terrible way. And this comment came from a listener who says, Lily and I talked a lot about the self-care topic, and we really need to be attuned to our own radar to understand what it personally means. It could be that we need to understand the whole concept, what it means to sacrifice, or what others expect us to do. Maybe I'm being selfish or lazy. But anyway, it was a really good podcast. And I think because we talked about it, that means it spoke to us. That was great to hear. David, what comments have you gotten?
Well, that was a really good comment from somebody. And I got a comment through a listener on the Podbean app, and it's from @John Rogers. And he says, "Can't believe I found this randomly searching. Thanks, David and team. I will begin listening ASAP." See, he thinks we have a team, but
well,
we're it.
We're it. This is a fun little operation that doesn't have a lot of team in the effort. Just a couple. It's more of a dynamic duo.
Well, we have a lot of fun anyway, no matter how many people there are.
That's true.
And we had a third comment. We actually have more than that, but we'll only go with 3 today for time. So, what did you come up with for the third comment?
We had another listener who said they just finished watching the episode, and again, it was with Sonia. It said, "Well done. Good message from Sonia. She was an excellent guest. Could be a little hard to hear at times. Might have been all the giggling. Camera angles were much better." So for those of you who don't just want to hear our voices and you want to follow along with what we're doing, please watch us on our YouTube link as well. So that leads us up to our guest today. And this is someone that I know and thought would be a great person to have on the show. I don't very often come up with a guest because I just follow along with whatever Crazy Canuck Dave says we should do. So today's guest is a friend of mine from Omaha, Nebraska. His name is Henry Roberts. He has been a firefighter in the past, and we kind of connected through Instagram. And I'm really not even sure what the common ground was, except for the fact that we like to talk about farming. He is an excellent advocate for mental health and agriculture, and he just really wants to be positive, spread as much information as he can. We collaborated on a couple of items that we wrote for an online magazine called Ag Now, and he's going to be one of those people that can help us bridge the information that we use in farming and in trucking with mental health And you know what? It really applies to his previous work in firefighting as well. So, Henry, what did I miss saying?
That's it. Perfect job.
If only my English teacher in high school would have ever said that. So, Henry, you have a blog. Tell me a little bit about your webpage and your blog and where to find it.
So it's hankwade.com is the web address. And on there is just articles that I write, stuff that I pick up when I listen to other podcasts or read something or see something on social media that will kind of trigger me to think about a certain topic or subject. And so I just I learned it from Jason Meadows by listening to his podcast. He has a blog, and then I told him I didn't even know guys blogged. I thought that was solely just a chick thing, right? And so I learned it because of the articles that we wrote for the Ag Now magazine. That's kind of where I discovered that I really liked to write, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a good way to get stuff off my chest or off my mind of what I was thinking about. So I went out there, and I've never built a website my entire life. And I went and started researching it, and I went through WordPress and just kind of started fumbling through it. I've about quit 3 times because trying to figure out how to load stuff into the website and figure out the format of it. But I kept pushing through and I got it figured out. So it's been a lot of fun, and I've had some positive comments from it. So it's helped a few people along the way. So that's what matters.
Yeah, I can totally attest to the positive comments, because you and I have talked a number of times, and it is surprising how many people have reached out and said, that was awesome. Thank you for helping me. And David, I'm sorry I cut you off.
Oh, that's fine. No, guys do things like this. You know, I've been doing this. I did blogging before there were blogs. I used to write stuff down just for the fun of it. It was just fun for me to just write things down and then just email it out to people. You know, and email was fairly new, and it was kind of interesting. Then I started a blog later on as well. Same kind of thing. I wanted to get the message out, and here we are today talking on a podcast. I never thought I would do that either, and it's still a thing that seems to be more dominated by women. But it's really surprising to me, some of the people that come up, some of the guys that come up and say, hey, you know, I love listening to your podcast. And I'm like, really? You know, because we have that stereotype in our mind that isn't correct, but that's what we think, right? So
speaking of stereotypes, all right. So Hank, on your blog, you wrote a great story, a great message about the trucking industry and some of the stereotypes. Talk about that. Tell us kind of the things that you learned and brought up.
Well, I'll kind of give you a little background. So in my job, I'm currently a military contractor, and no one hates the military contractor any more than a government civilian, right? So if there's any union listeners out there, we're like the non-union people of the defense world. But anyways, when something great happens, the military gets all the praise. The contractor, we never get any kind of praise whatsoever, not award anything. We're just there, we're doing our job. So as I study and learn about agriculture, I see a lot of people praise the farmers. And, you know, it's always about the people growing your food. But it kind of got me thinking, like, who helps the farmer? You know, what can the farmer do, or what can't the farmer do? And it led me to the trucking industry, because you think about, I guess for me, the aha moment was I was sitting there eating a steak one night by myself. I think my wife was watching TV and probably mad at me. But I was thinking about all the stuff that I learned over the last 2 years and what it took to get that steak on the plate, and how many times a truck was involved with moving that piece of meat all the way from the farmer planting to the people growing the cow, to the packing house, to the warehouse, to the grocery store. There are so many trucks involved with moving there. And then thinking about the mental health aspect, and I kind of put 2 and 2 together and I wanted to do some research about the trucking industry and mental health and what happens to someone on the road. What happens when they have a mental breakdown, not just a truck breakdown. And so I started, I mean, there's a ton of information out on Google or internet. You just get out and search it, and there's all sorts of websites and studies that have been done. And a lot of those studies point to the fact that there's more studies that need to be done. We don't understand the trucking industry and how to help the truckers and how to keep them safe, keep them happy. Because anyone that's a trucker will know, to be productive, you got to be healthy, be on the road, be moving. And if your trucker's sick and not working to the best of his ability, you're not being productive. So I did a bunch of research and kind of threw together an article, and that's where we're at.
So when I think about the stuff that you brought up, it so ties together with the theme of how David started this podcast, talking about what happens over the road, and the fact that we just can't be afraid, whether it's in my industry in ag, in your previous industry in firefighting, and with David in trucking, that we're all in very high risk categories, and we are probably taking the best care of ourselves. And I know that you're a huge advocate, Hank, for taking better care of ourselves. One of the statistics you had in your blog talks about truck drivers are the 5th highest on the list for being at risk for suicide. And I don't see that number going down. We've heard that from a couple of experts so far. If you were to give your opinion, Hank, how do we lower that? Any advice, whether it's to the drivers themselves or their companies?
I think of 3 aspects. We need to get information out to the truck drivers themselves. We also need to work with trucking companies that they are taking care of their employees, and not just physical health, but making sure they're mentally okay. And then the last thing I think about is truckers spend a lot of time in truck stops. And I've gone through the truck stops, and you always see there's you can go to a little chapel. They have a priest or a minister there or something, or a chiropractor. But what about a little office that a guy can go in and say, I'm struggling. I need some help, or I don't feel well, or I just need someone to talk to. What would it take to get the truck stops to implement some kind of mental health aspect into the services that they offer to the truckers? And can they be a collaboration with trucking companies and truck drivers? And that's kind of where I've thought about. It's a huge service that could happen, but it's lacking.
So, David, is that a realistic possibility?
Some of their stuff, when I think about it, unfortunately, this is capitalism, and that is that what's in it for the truck stop? They are cutting back, and they've gone from full service to very minimal service these days. And they would probably point to the chapel that they have there and say, go to the chapel, and chapel's not always manned or a woman. And hey, you like that, right, Bridget?
Yeah, that made me laugh a little. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of places have chapels of some kind or another, and that's a great idea. And I really think that would be an awesome idea if you had somebody looking after somebody there all the time to talk about mental health with drivers. We used to have truckers only areas in the restaurants. We go and we sit down and we talk about things. And that was kind of the mental health break, the bull session, just air your grievances or just listen to others, and we don't have that anymore, especially in these COVID times. But yeah, I was being kind of quiet when Hank was talking because it's interesting, when people started realizing in 2020 that truckers are essential workers, all of the truckers are like, well, duh. We knew that for a long time, and we've never had the recognition. And now the pendulum has swung back again, and it's tough out here. You know, I was just trying to look for it quickly here, but 4 attempted suicides in one small area this past week among truck drivers. 4. And I don't know if they were successful or not, but there's a lot of problems with drivers on the road these days.
And I wondered too, even if we start off small, what if we could just get information about mental health in the truck stops? A pamphlet or brochure that someone could pick up and throw in the cab of their truck with a number to, the suicide hotline on there, or some resources that they can, so you can go back to your truck into the privacy of your own cab and make a call from there. Because you don't want to be in the middle of a truck stop with a bunch of people breaking down and tearing up and a bunch of guys staring at you. But if you could go back to your cab with that piece of information or a magnet that you could throw on your dash or something, that would be a great way to start, just to start getting the information out there. When I was going through my mental health problem, the biggest thing for me is I didn't know there was help I could get, because I always knew if I became suicidal, I could always call the hotline. But what do you do when you're not really suicidal, but you're down and out and you're depressed? I didn't know there was help. I thought it was something I had to figure out myself. After I got better and then learned I could have made myself better faster if I had known where to get the information from. So
we have in Canada, we have a program put on by the federal government for everybody when it comes to mental health. But and there are EAP programs through insurance companies, employee assistance programs, but getting that information to the driver, getting it to the employee, is tough to do. I brought up something once, and the person at the company said, well, it's been posted on the wall there for the last 6 months. I'm like, oh, yeah.
My problem with the EAP programs, they are useful, but if you're out on the road and you don't want your employer to know that you're struggling mentally, because that might put you at a risk of, we're going to take you off the road for a while, that prevents a lot of people, I think, from calling, because, well, if I call, are they going to report to my employer? Is my employer going to find out that I'm not doing well? Versus calling a third party and everything is kept confidential, I think it gives people a little more urge to call.
The EAP program is third party as far as the Canadian side of things, and they do not and are not allowed to report back to the company in any shape or form whatsoever. Good. So I can tell you that right now, that the EAP programs that I've seen so far are very, because that was one of my worries. Mm-hmm. What if they go to my company?
Right.
I've been fired because of mental health, and I don't really want to go through that again.
No.
It's not, it's kind of the old thing where kick you while you're down, right?
Well, and that company should have realized that they had money invested in you and getting you to be a trained driver. Why not just spend a few bucks and get the guy healthy and get him back on the road? Instead of, well, we're going to kick you loose and make you someone else's problem. That's not solving anything.
Companies look at the short term and they think it'll cost them money to look after a driver. But when you look after the driver, and I say this all the time, people with mental health issues that understand what they're dealing with will make your company far more money than many other people, because we know what we're dealing with. Bridget?
So what about the guys, and I'm being stereotypical by saying guys, because I know the greater majority of drivers are men. What about those that don't realize that they're struggling? And how you guys have been smart enough to overcome that stigma of, I'm a man, I can take it. I don't have to tell anybody that something's bad. How do you get other men to do that? Because again, I work in the farming community where just suck it up. It'll be better. You have to be better. And nobody consoles you to help you. How do we fix that?
Operations training. So I was a fleet manager and I've had my own trucks, but getting the first point of contact with the driver to understand something about mental health. So when the driver calls in, this person can recognize that there may be some issues, and that person can help that one that doesn't know what they're dealing with. And I've had those conversations where somebody's freaking out about something, and I'm like, okay, well, this is what the issue is right now. And they're like, how did you know that? So that's where some of the training costs money for a company. But then that's also where they save money, because then that driver will run through brick walls for you.
So, yeah, I was going to call on Hank. I'm like, what do you want to say now?
Well, so I think about, like, right here in Omaha, we have Werner, and just down the road we have Crete. I mean, those are two pretty good sized trucking companies. And what would it take for a guy like me to become a consultant, to go into those companies and do exactly what Dave is saying, where, hey, when you orientate your new driver, I want this mental health speech to be part of your orientation, so that when on the road, they know where to turn for information. Because like Dave said, well, we don't want to spend the money on having to change our orientation program, but how much money does it cost you when you're on the road and all of a sudden you're now sitting on the side of the road having a mental health breakdown, and that load's not moving or not getting delivered on time, or it's late? The company's got to kind of get outside of the box and think about, you got to spend a little money, but you're going to save a ton of money by your driver being healthy and keeping that load moving.
Yeah, it's huge. And I've been working with some of the trucking associations in Canada here, and we are starting to incorporate that into some of the early driver training. I actually did a seminar this past fall where I talked to women potential drivers. And so it is coming slowly. But yeah, you could, if you look at some of these big companies, their turnover is over 100% a year. And if you take a small number of $5,000, which is what it costs to onboard somebody, how many, if you have 2,000 drivers, somebody that's good with math can tell me how much that will be. And you could, no, it's not Bridget, she says,
Not me.
but
I don't do math this time of day.
You could take some of that money that you're going to save, and you could hire somebody to do exactly what you're saying, Hank, and your driver turnover will drop dramatically. Somebody as a go-between that can help, and it'd be a fantastic idea. And again, a lot of times what I hear is a lot of lip service from companies, but when it comes down to the crunch, how is it going to make me money? That's what a lot of these companies' attitude is, because they have shareholders to answer to. That's why they're in business, is to make money. So if you can go in and show them, look, I can save you X amount of dollars, and this is what it's going to cost you, so you're still going to be plus, your return on investment is going to be this, I think they would hire you quickly.
Yeah.
So let's take the dollars and cents out of the big companies. I like what Hank said. What are the things that can be done locally? Is there something that should be left at truck stops that's easy for us to do? I mean, it's not like I can get into the men's room and put stuff on the back of the stall door so you see it. But what are the things that we need to encourage of each other? Because you have people listening right now who are thinking, maybe I'm struggling. How do I know I'm struggling? And who do I call? And maybe we should link Hank's blog in our show notes.
I have it written down here to put in the show notes. So that's definitely going to happen.
Okay.
I think that's some great ideas.
Yeah. That's one thing I've been thinking about, is a lot of these farm trade on the agricultural side. There's a lot of farm trade shows, and maybe we put together some kind of campaign where I can work with some sponsors to develop business cards or little magnets or something that at trade shows a guy can hand out just a simple, here's who you call, or here's a website you can go to if you're struggling. And just all you have to do is point people the right direction and make them understand that it's okay to call. It's confidential. And the sooner you call, the better you get to feeling better.
And something small and discreet really helps,
Mm-hmm.
because people, it's like if you don't want that big box mailed to you when you're a single bachelor guy that says pink tutu because you ordered it for your daughter. Okay, so you don't want that image. You want to still have your big burly guy image, but it's something little that can help you, and whether it's that little card that gives you better information, it's a good starting point.
So
Go ahead.
Are you suggesting that next time I print up some of my Crazy Canuck Trucking podcast business cards, on the backside, we'll put some of that information?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. That'd be a good idea.
Because that's what we're about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to help out and get people talking and get people working on themselves so we can have a happier life.
So speaking of a happier, go ahead, Hank. No, you go ahead.
I just gonna add one more. The more things like this, like your podcast, stuff like Jason Meadows is doing, Jeff Dissenberger with his Tugs organization, even Quentin Keneally up here in Nebraska, on the east coast of Nebraska, getting out on social media and podcasts, it helps other guys see that, hey, this is a regular guy and he had to get help. It's because there's so many stigmas out there. But if they can see that there's a lot of us that are just normal people, we went through a bad time, and it's okay to not be okay, as Jeff says. And I think that really helps. That's how I found out, that listening to other people tell their stories, like, wow, I'm not in this alone. There are other people just like me. So
I'm gonna give you a little sneak preview, Hank. So you don't know this yet, but there is an app out there now. The app is out there. It's called truckerfitness.com. And the episode 15 with Shelly.
Right before this one.
One before this one. They have partnered together. And what I am doing for the Trucker Fitness app is I am putting together the mental health aspect of the Trucker Fitness. By the time this podcast comes out, I'm hoping there will be some of my videos up and talking about mental health as it relates to fitness and feeling better. But that's one thing we are doing right now. So Trucker Fitness is an app, and it's pretty cool. We're going to try and incorporate the mental health aspect into that whole round. And so Bridget, you had a question, or you had a comment about happy. What have you got for us?
Well, because I came here to be positive. And so, again, as a podcast that focuses a lot on trucking. So, Hank, any good, fun, happy driving stories, family vacations, road trips, that kind of thing?
Well, since this is half Canadian, this podcast, when I was 16 years old.
Only 1/3 today.
Yeah.
2 Americans, 1 Canadian.
So I grew up just north of San Francisco, California is where I grew up. And my stepmom, her parents would take off and go to Canada every year. They had a boat. Actually, they left their boat up in Canada. And so you go up to a place called Campbell River, up I think it's in Victoria Island. And then you take a ferry over to a couple islands. We end up in a place called Cortez Island. And it's just some of the most beautiful country you've ever seen. Great fishing. So anyway, so we took off. It was a 24-hour drive from where we lived in California all the way up to the border. And then you get out, and then you start going on ferries. And as a kid, I had never seen these big giant boats that they're putting semis on, buses, cars, and they ship you across the water. And it was the most cool, unique experiences I've ever felt. And getting to go to another country, seeing Canada, even though it was the British Columbia side, but I mean, we won't hold that against them kind of thing. But
All left coast people.
yeah. It was just a really fun. In fact, the trip was so long that when I got back to high school, I had to do a Saturday school because I had missed so many days. And, if you miss so many days, you get in trouble kind of thing. So it felt weird. On Saturday, I had to go to school to make up time that I lost. And but anyways, it was a fun trip. We would just go fishing right off the rocks, and they would set prawn traps. I mean, we were eating fresh seafood. And the other thing was being so far north at 10 o'clock at night, it's still light out. That really messes a guy up.
Yeah.
Being from California, I couldn't figure out why it was still light at 10 o'clock at night. But that was probably one of the best trips I've ever taken, was up through Canada.
Nice.
And a memory that's going to stick with you forever. And when I said a family vacation, etc., road trip, I thought of a road trip, but it was more a road trip in college, and it's probably not the same sweet family value.
This is a family show.
This is a family show.
Size matters,
Yeah, it was all girls, and we went to Canada, so it kind of fits this whole thing. But
yeah, I've heard about those American girls coming to Canada.
Yeah.
we were going to another gal's wedding, and we had a roaring good time.
Did you make it to the wedding?
Yeah, it was. Although there was a
pictures?
Calamity of car errors on the way, but we made it.
Of course. Were you traveling with Sonia by any chance?
I was not, but let's just say if you have a caravan of 3 cars full of college girls, and 80% of them are farm girls, and one car has a flat tire, you'd be amazed. It looks like a NASCAR pit crew out there changing the tire with a lot of luggage strung out across the road.
And no help needed if it's all farm girls. They got it all figured out.
We did.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What else have you got for us, Hank? Any other stories or times that you want to share with us?
Well, I don't know. I mean, at 46 years old, I've lived a pretty good life. So I enjoy, I haven't really traveled much around, but one thing that's weird is when I was a kid, I can't remember even how old I was. We drove from California to Minnesota, drove right through I-80. And then when I got moved here to Omaha, I thought, how weird was it that years ago I drove through Omaha and thought to myself, I wish I could go back in time and see what I thought of this town when I drove through it. And now here I am living here, kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's a pretty good memory. I mean, and I had a lot of freedom as a kid. My dad was very trusting of us. At 17 years old, my friends and I would take off and go camping for the weekend and go have so many good adventures. And then there was the time I left for the Air Force. That was definitely. I remember laying in bed the first night in San Antonio, Texas, in basic training, thinking, "What did I get myself into, boy?" But it was the guy that put us. They tuck you into bed, and he shuts off the lights, and he yells, "Good night, ladies. Welcome to hell." And that's the last thing I heard before I shut my eyes that night.
So just based on your experience with the things that you have done mental health wise, any last thought you want to make sure people hear today, Hank?
Just that don't struggle any longer than you need to. It's go ahead and reach out to a friend or call one of the hotlines, but get help. And the other aspect of it is if you think you have a friend that is struggling, go ahead and ask them. Just be upfront. Hey, are you okay? Do you need help? Is there something I can help you with? Because the majority of the time, just you asking that person gives just enough hope. They realize that maybe someone does care about me and I need to get some help. Because a lot of people in that dark hole feel like no one cares about them. And one kind smile, one kind word can be enough to say, maybe I don't want to die. And we need to take care of each other.
And this
I
year
think
especially.
that is so profound. I hope people realize what you just said there, because that's literally how simple and how important it is that one kind word, one kind gesture can stop somebody. I mean, we all think of stopping somebody from jumping off a bridge, and and that's dramatic, and that's great when that happens. But you don't know how many times you've saved somebody's life just by something kind.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Hank, I want to say one thing, and for our listeners, my introduction to Hank was through Twitter. And one thing I noticed about Hank, he's always very serious on Twitter. And, what? He's not? I mean, all those things he says about his wife and what he does is not all true. Hank, tell us about your Twitter.
So I guess I should let a disclaimer out that my wife knows almost everything I type before I type it, or so we do joke around a lot. And the reason how that came about was I was so tired of everything on social media being so negative. Everything was so bad. So I want to be the guy that just maybe makes you laugh or read something funny, and maybe it's making fun of my wife or something that a guy or a woman can relate to about a marriage or a kid or something. And so my wife, I mean, we get along so well, but if what we say and do make fun of each other helps just one person a day laugh, give you a few minutes of not feeling so down, that's why we do it. My wife and I don't really hate each other as bad as we think we do, but so it's just because when you scroll through those feeds, it's negative. One happy thing is just so nice to read every now and then.
Well,
they are positive, although the fact that she hasn't maimed you never ceases to amaze me. So God bless you, Tracy. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I love him, and I love after we had Jason Hansen on in episode 11 and his little cowbell to get his wife to come to him, and then you were reenacting that.
It didn't work.
No, it didn't look like it worked anyway. But you're still here.
Yes,
and you're not needing a cowbell.
Oh, and for the record, I cook probably 90% of the meals around here, and I do all the dishes too. So
that is true. I can attest to that because I do know both Hank and Tracy, and I do know that is true. So he has that redeeming quality that he can get away with more.
I liked you right up until the point that you said you do all the dishes. Now, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this podcast. When I'm home, guess what I'm going to have to be doing?
On my wife's behalf, she does 100% of the laundry. So it's a trade-off. I could not do dishes, but then I'm doing my own laundry. So we work together. So
that's the important thing, right?
Yes.
So I want to thank you very much for coming on, Hank. It's been a lot of fun. And I have notifications on for you for Twitter because I love following along, and I love your attitude. And I know some of the issues in the past and how you've worked through that. So thank you very much for coming on with us. You've had some great ideas. I hope people listen to this and then listen again and listen carefully to some of the things you said, because there are some really important things and things that you said that are going to help people and going to save lives. Also want to thank Jesse James Dupree for his music that he's allowed us to use, and Dixie Inc. And thank you, Size Matters. Close us out.
Well, folks, thank you once again for listening to the Crazy Canuck Truckin' podcast. We hope you subscribe on all platforms so you can follow along, especially follow us on Twitter where the good times roll with Henry Roberts. So y'all have a great day. Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
From the sky.